Can you imagine the fact that animals like pigs, cows, sheep, and chickens once never existed in America, and plants like potatoes and tomatoes never existed in Europe? Then we would assume that French fries wouldn't exist without potatoes being in France, and KFC wouldn't exist if there were no chickens in Kentucky. The reason why these animals weren't everywhere starts 250 million years ago. You see, back then, Earth only had one giant continent called Pangaea. After millions of years, it separated to what we now know as Afro-Eurasia and the Americas, along with other small islands. And during these millions of years, animals from each continent developed independently, creating species that the other didn't have. But then a guy named Christopher Columbus decided to venture out in ocean. Assuming that Earth is round and didn't know that America existed, he concluded that there should be a closer route to India. But, well, instead he found America. A French dude heard about this new world, America, and decided to also go there. But when he got there with 10 other men, he burned down his ship, so since there's no other way back, he could only be more motivated to start surviving there. Along with them, they brought animals from Afro-Eurasia like cows, sheep, goats, and horses. I can only imagine if those voyages were years long, they probably had a farm on their ship. Yep, just a normal day feeding my cow in the middle of the ocean. But think about it, bringing these animals to America is the equivalent of bringing an alien back from space. At least these aliens weren't sentient. So Native Americans were pretty content with having new sources of wool, meat, and hides. There's a story about a person who trained pigs to hunt other pigs living in the wild. He lived in the wild because the Europeans were trying to exploit their people and using them as slaves. So he found a way of life where he and his pigs were like family and trying to survive. When they're hunting, one would track the target, one would seize, one would assist. The man would then deliver the final blow. A group of soldiers saw these pigs and slain them, not knowing they were one's property. After knowing that they have done the equivalent of deleting one's best friend, they felt real bad. Some think that living with such animals were very uncouth. Pigs being notioned as livestock and food instead of service animals like dogs. But the native viewed animals differently, not as food or service, but rather tamed or untamed. They had opposing Weltanschauung. I hope this kindles some food for thought, pun totally intended, and spark some interest into this topic, because in this course we're going to dive deeper into how some things interact with another in a big scale. So far we've talked about how this native culture interacted with an opposing worldview, and about how people interacted with a big piece of land out of nowhere, which in this case is America. So if you're interested in this social studies course, take a dive. Maybe you'll catch on.